their automobiles. If the Madison Avenue ad men could help GM with their catastrophic PR problems, they could surely help President Videla. So the Argentine government paid Burson Marsteller $1.2 million per year to work their magic.
In the fall, Burson Marsteller delivered their first presentation to Videla. They proposed a catchy slogan to battle the unfair press, which translated to, "We are right and human. We are righteous and humane."
After slapping the slogan on thousands of bumper stickers, the ad agency ran full-page PR inserts in international newspapers and magazines, boasting of Argentina's vast beauty and history. And they hosted press junkets in Buenos Aires for journalists to see how cosmopolitan the country had become.
The positive press slowly improved Videla's image, but the team from Burson Marsteller wanted something bigger. Advertisement spreads and bumper stickers could only take Argentina so far.
Videla gave them an idea. 10 years earlier, Argentina had been picked to host one of the biggest events on the planet, the 1978 FIFA World Cup. Now, it would be the perfect opportunity to shape Argentina's image on the international stage.
There's a saying in Argentina, there are three things in life: soccer, tango, and God. And for many Argentines, soccer was the most important.
So, with hundreds of thousands of spectators, fans, and news crews traveling to the country for the event, Videla and his team of ad men knew it was crucial to present a positive facade.
As UTA member Emilio Macera remarked, the tournament will show the world that Argentina is a trustworthy country, capable of carrying out huge projects, and it will help push back against the criticism that is raining on us from around the world.
Videla undertook the huge project like a true military dictator. He cracked down even harder on demonstrators and bulldozed shanty towns throughout the city. Poor and homeless people were transported into the countryside to portray the cities as clean and prosperous.
Most of the citizens were too caught up in World Cup fever to pay attention. All the news headlines focused on the Argentine national team's mixed chances in the tournament. They were a strong team, but they weren't considered one of the best.
Then, on June 1st, 1978, Videla welcomed the world to his country. He greeted players, world leaders, and spectators. When the news cameras were rolling, he smiled and waved to crowds like a benevolent leader.
Videla attended many of the matches, but not in his traditional army uniform. The ad agency's focus groups found that Videla tested better and seemed more relatable in gray woolen suits.
But simply hosting the tournament wasn't enough for Videla. He knew that to truly change his public image, they would have to win the famous Golden Trophy.
To get his hands on soccer's highest honor, Videla planned to use every tactic he could to gain an edge in the competition. Rumors circulated that Argentina's team was doped with amphetamines before matches.
Whether it was the team's talent, Videla's brutal tactics, or just simple luck, Argentina made it to the semi-final bracket. They were up against three strong teams: Brazil, Peru, and Poland.
Heading into their semi-final match against Peru, Argentina would have to win by 4 points to win the bracket and advance to the championship game.
Scoring 4 goals in soccer is a rare accomplishment. Most people assumed Argentina's cup chances were over, but those people underestimated Videla's commitment.
Videla knew beating Peru by 4 points would require much more than doping his players and motivating them with kidnappings. He is reported to have considered other strategies, including bribing the referees. Again, that was deemed too risky. Instead, to ensure victory, he may have turned to his allies in Operation Condor.
It's possible that Videla telephoned Peru's president, Francisco Morales Bermudez. Although Peru wasn't one of the primary members of Condor, it supported the alliance. And Morales Bermudez had come to power in a military coup also. In a way, he and Videla were brothers in arms.
On this wall, after a few pleasantries, Videla cut to the chase. Peru didn't have a chance of taking home the final trophy, but Argentina did. And winning the World Cup was paramount for Argentina's image, and for Videla's military mood.
But Morales Bermudez was a wiry general too. He pushed back, asking his team to take a dive would make him look weak. Strength was crucial for him right now. He was fighting his own battle against left-wing revolutionaries.
Well, if Peru was concerned about revolutionaries, Videla could help with that. In fact, he knew that Morales Bermudez was being hounded by a group of Peruvian dissidents living in Buenos Aires. According to some sources, Videla offered to make them disappear. And to sweeten the deal, he'd give Morales Bermudez $50 million in cash. All he had to do was make sure Peru lost by 4 goals.
After a long pause, Morales Bermudez said he would see what he could do.
The tension was high on June 21st, 1978. Peru's pride was on the line, and if Argentina won by any less than 4 goals, their tournament was over.
The day started out with a bad omen for the Peruvian team. On the way to the stadium, their Argentine bus driver got lost, not once, but several times.
What should have been a 30-minute drive took over 2 hours. The coach and players started to wonder, was it a message from Videla? They knew the stories about his desaparecidos.
And then things got even stranger. When the Peruvian team finally arrived at the stadium, they had 2 unexpected high-profile guests. Videla himself, former U.S. Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger.
You could reserve a spot in front of your house if it were a disabled classroom or whatever they call it, handicap or whatever.
Until today, the players were shocked.
Really? Yeah.
Their fears from the bus seemed to be coming true.
Videla told them, "Gentlemen, I just want to tell you this game tonight is one between brothers. And in the name of Latin American brotherhood, I am here to share my hopes that things turn out well. Latin America is watching you."
The players understood the subtext. He was watching. Argentina's soldiers were watching them. Even Kissinger was watching them. The players, or their families, could very easily be killed or disappear without anyone ever knowing.
So, with that pressure, the Peruvian team took the field against Argentina. Even though Peru was a strong team, they played noticeably poorly. Halfway through the match, down 2 goals to 0, Peru's coach mysteriously removed their star player, and their captain left the game as well. The Peruvian spectators' boos were drowned out by the thunderous cheers from Argentina.
In the end, Argentina won by 6-0. 2 more goals than they needed to advance. And with that, they were on their way to the much-awaited final match against the Netherlands.
4 days later, at the climactic game, over 70,000 spectators packed into the Estadio Monumental in Buenos Aires. Sitting beside Videla in the VIP booth was, of course, Henry Kissinger.
It was a hard-fought game. At the end of regulation time, the score was tied, so they went into overtime. And then, miraculously, Argentina scored. 70,000 spectators erupted in cheers and every other emotion. It was a shining moment for the country.
During the ceremony, Videla joined the players on the field to hoist the trophy over their heads. As far as Videla knew, the World Cup was an overwhelming success.
But for many, including the United States, the whole spectacle seemed like smoke and mirrors. Sports journalists questioned Argentina's win, as many openly accused Videla of rigging the event.
More importantly, the whole world press descended on Buenos Aires during the tournament, and they couldn't avoid focusing on the human rights protests going on in the city. After the disappearance of Azucena Villaflor, the Mother's March actually intensified. Given the millions of dollars he spent on ad campaigns, witty bumper stickers, and winning the World Cup, he was still unbelievable and to the world.
Coming up, Videla cracks down harder on his people, but it finally brings down his dictatorship.
Now back to the story.
The following is a dramatization of one of the many kidnappings that occurred in Argentina under Videla. On September 18th,
Francisco asked them what they wanted, but they told him to shut up or they'd kill him. They drove Francisco across the city to the Navy Petty Officers School. There, hidden in a concrete basement, was a makeshift concentration camp and torture facility.
Francisco was marched past prisoners in squalid conditions. Men, women, and children sat on floors covered. Within a week, most of the 60 other student council members were brought to the Navy Petty Officer School too. They cried to their parents, begging to go home.
At one point, Francisco overheard two of the guards arguing. Nobody knew what to do with the students. They didn't want to release them back to their families. It would cause too much controversy. But killing 60 children didn't seem right either.
A day later, the guards entered the cell with the students and shot them all. The bodies were dumped out during one of Videla's infamous death flights into the Atlantic Ocean or La Plata.
By the fall of 1978, Videla's hard work repairing his image had fallen to pieces. His country had won the FIFA World Cup, but many around the globe accused him, rightfully, of rigging the tournament. And the international media presence in Buenos Aires had focused a spotlight on Videla's human rights abuses.
Shockingly, Videla decided to double down. What was once his national reorganization process began to be called La Guerra Sucia, or the Dirty War.
Ground zero for Videla's dirty war was the Navy Petty Officers School, also called the ESMA, where hundreds of prisoners at a time were held in concrete and wire cages.
Most of the men and women brought here were not even Marxist revolutionaries. In fact, most of the violent leftist guerrilla forces had already been exterminated within the first months of Videla's dictatorship. Instead, the people being kidnapped and tortured were students, lawyers, religious leaders, and anyone else who spoke out against Videla's regime.
Francisco Lima were considered the lucky ones. They died quickly. Many of the other prisoners were subjected to months of cruel and horrifying torture. Some were hooked up to car batteries or sodomized with cattle prods. Others were strung from chains and dunked headfirst into tubs of water.
If pregnant women were detained, they were kept alive until they gave birth. The babies were taken to a secret adoption facility and taken home by military families. The military likely considered it their duty to raise the children of revolutionaries to eliminate any seeds of progressive thought.
Meanwhile, the babies' mothers were killed and disposed of.
With so many missing Argentines and rumors of a black market for babies, human rights organizations around the world sounded the alarm. Amnesty International, the Red Cross, and several other groups started tracking and publishing the numbers of those believed missing. It climbed well into the thousands.
So, by the fall of 1979, Videla found himself in a public relations firestorm. All the ad firms on Madison Avenue couldn't get him out of this mess.
The negative publicity was like blood in the water for Videla's fellow co-conspirators. They began jockeying for control of the government.
But the more crucial consequence of the horrible press was a deteriorating partnership with the United States. The Carter administration began threatening to revoke military and financial aid if Videla didn't change his policies.
With unrest at home and weakening relationships abroad, all hope seemed seemed to be lost for Videla. Weighing his options, we might imagine that he placed a call to one of his last few trusted allies, Henry Kissinger.
Kissinger and Videla talked like old war buddies. Videla admitted that for the first time in his life, he had lost track of his mission. He told Kissinger about one of the lessons his father had taught him, that as soon as a leader cannot govern effectively, he is a danger to his men and his mission. Videla wondered if he was now endangering Argentina.
But what would he do if he stepped down? Would he ever really be able to retire completely? Maybe he could go back to teaching at the military academy where he'd spent so much of his life.
In the end, Kissinger told Videla that he would support him in whatever decision he came to. However, he reassured Videla that he had, in fact, served his mission. When Videla hung up, he knew what he had to do.
On March 29, 1981, 55-year-old President Jorge Videla officially stepped down. After turning over power to Army General Roberto Viola, Videla retired to a quiet life with his family.
8 months later, Viola was ousted by the commander-in-chief of the army, Leopoldo Galtieri. In Argentine tradition, Galtieri would prove to be a short-lived leader as well. He was removed from office in June 1982 and replaced by a temporary administrator.
Given that the junta had proved itself to be entirely incompetent, the administrator announced that democratic elections would take place in 1983. Videla's military junta had finally run its course.
After 7 years of military rule, Argentina was no better off than they had been under the Perons. The economy was still in shambles, and an estimated 15,000 to 30,000 citizens were missing or dead.
When the new civilian government took over in 1983, the people demanded justice. Almost immediately, investigations were launched into the junta's concentration camps, torture, death flights, and murders.
In August 1984, 59-year-old Videla and many of his co-conspirators were arrested. Less than a year later, in April 1985, Videla was convicted of 66 murders, 306 kidnappings, and 93 cases of torture. He was stripped of his rank of general and sentenced to life. Videla, who cared so deeply about being a soldier, served out his sentence in a military prison.
But after 5 years in prison, Videla received a surprise announcement. Much to the shock of the country, he was pardoned by the new president of Argentina, Carlos Menem, in 1990. Menem contended that Videla and the junta members had served their time. For the country to fully heal, they should be forgiven.
Not everyone agreed. Between 1996 and 2010, Videla found himself accused, arrested, jailed, and placed under house arrest by various judges who believed Menem's decision was unconstitutional.
Finally, on December 22, 2010, 85-year-old Videla was once again sentenced to life in prison. This time for the confirmed death of 30 prisoners at the Navy Petty Officer School. He was sentenced to an additional 50 years for his role in the kidnapping of babies.
During the proceedings, many of the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo confronted the man who had destroyed their families. But through the heart-wrenching testimonies from victims and families, Videla remained defiant. He responded without any remorse. "I accept the responsibility as the highest military authority during the internal war. My subordinates followed my orders."
In his eyes, he was a soldier, a commanding officer fighting a war. And in wars, people die. Except his victims weren't enemy invaders. They were children and innocent mothers.
He was shipped off to a civilian prison to live the rest of his life.
This was perhaps the single most crushing blow to Videla as a lifelong soldier with a proud family history of serving his country.
Videla died in May 2013 at age 87. Despite appeals from his family, Argentina refused to give Videla a military burial.
Ever since Jorge Videla was a young boy, he had dreamed of being a soldier. But blinded by the trappings of power, he abandoned the ideals of protecting and defending his country.
In the end, he was remembered not as a decorated general or president, but as a criminal who disgraced and terrorized his country.
Thanks for listening to Dictators. Next week, we begin our look into Augusto Pinochet, the president of Chile during the Operation Condor years.
You can find all episodes of Dictators and all other Parcast originals for free on Spotify.
Not only does Spotify already have all of your favorite music, but now Spotify is making it easy for you to enjoy all of your favorite Parcast originals like Dictators for free from your phone, desktop, or smart speaker.
To stream Dictators on Spotify, just open the app and type Dictators in the search bar. We'll see you next time.
Dictators was created by Max Cutler and is a Parcast Studios original. It is executive produced by Max Cutler, sound designed by Dick Schroeder, with production assistance by Ron Shapiro, Carly Madden, and Travis Clark. This episode of Dictators was written by Adam De Silva, with writing assistance by Kate Gallagher, and stars Kate Leonard and Richard Rossner. September 21st, 1976. On the rainy streets of Washington, D.C., 44-year-old Orlando Letelier drove his Chevy Chevelle to his office like any normal morning. With him were two colleagues, Michael and Ronnie Moffat, a young couple who had only been married for 4 months. The three worked for a progressive think tank called the Institute for Policy Studies. Since assuming his position there, Letelier, a Chilean national, had used IPS as a weapon against Augusto Pinochet, pressing Washington to sanction the Chilean dictator for human rights violations.
For Letelier, the mission was personal. He was living in exile, thrown out of his home country after Pinochet took control 3 years earlier. And with each passing day, the target on Letelier's back grew bigger and bigger.
As the Chevelle cruised through Sheridan Circle, all of a sudden the three heard a beeping sound. And then
the car exploded, killing Letelier and Ronnie Moffat. Michael Moffat miraculously survived.
The assassination of Orlando Letelier shocked the world. But what many didn't know was that it was just one of many targeted killings by South America's dictators. Dictators who belonged to an initiative known as Operation Condor.
Hey, my name is Monique.
Welcome to Dictators, a Parcast original. I'm Richard.
And I'm Kate. You can find all episodes of Dictators and all other Parcast originals for free on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. To stream Dictators for free on Spotify, just open the app and type Dictators in the search bar.
Today we begin our dive into the life and reign of the ruthless autocratic Chilean ruler, General Augusto Pinochet. From 1973 to 1990, Pinochet ruled Chile like a tyrant. By the time he left office, tens of thousands were missing or dead, and it was all done with the awareness of United States intelligence.
What up,
This
pimp?
week, we'll
I'd be like,
explore
lady,
how the
what is this
ambitious
issue?
Pinochet climbed the
You wanna be
ranks of
called
the
a pimp?
military and unexpectedly came into power with a
I know
little
I
help from the
masturbated when this thing
CIA.
really covered.
Next week, we'll discuss the growing backlash against the iron-fisted despot and how the power of the people led to his downfall.
We'll dive into the rise
I
of
one time got to
Augusto
take a plane
Pinochet
just basically
right
alone.
after this.
Or there were like, I think 1 or 2 other people there on this plane. and
In the latter half of the 20th century, over 10 million Chileans lived each and every day in perpetual fear of Augusto Pinochet. Under his regime, over 40,000 men and women were systemically imprisoned, tortured, murdered, or never seen again. In fact, over 3,000 Chileans were killed or made to disappear. Over 1,000 of those have never been found.
Pinochet's sole mission was to eliminate any form of socialism.
There were like 4 people.
For a
I was
period
one of
in
the
the
4.
early 1970s,
Shout out to
Chile
those
was
people.
run by a socialist.
I remember
Pinochet
they're like,
vowed
you
to
can
never
sit
let it
wherever
happen
you
again.
want on this plane.
Even if
I
it
remember
meant
they were just like,
17
whatever
years
seat you
of
want.
repression
They're like,
and death.
I'm like,
Unlike
can I
other
put my feet up
dictators
here?
in
They're
this
like,
series,
absolutely, you do whatever the
Augusto
fuck you
Pinochet
want.
never showed any ambition to obtain political
Yeah.
power. In
And
fact,
what? I was like,
for the
well,
first
so I can
57
lift the
years
thing up,
of
put
his
my feet up,
life,
and then
Pinochet was a career
like
military
lay
officer.
down like this. Like, absolutely.
Historically, the Chilean military had operated somewhat separately from the government.
Yeah.
Many
Why?
officers detested
They're like-
politicians, who they
They
considered
even just
corrupt.
asked. They didn't even do the whole
At
cart,
certain
the
points in
drink cart or
Chilean
anything.
history,
Like, you guys want
civilians
anything?
considered the military as the guardians of democracy, more so than politicians. But this
Really? Yeah.
adoration was
This is the best
apparently
fight you ever
reserved
take. Well, the
only
best fight I ever
for
taken is fucking
officers.
Virgin.
The common soldier was looked upon with
Virgin
disdain.
is the best.
In Pamela Constable and Arturo Valenzuela's book, A Nation of Enemies, Chile
Never
under
touching it ever.
Pinochet, one retired colonel notes, there was a palpable lack of understanding and contact between the two worlds. People loved parades, but politicians mocked us as little toy soldiers. We suffered great economic hardships, and it caused much resentment.
Perhaps it was one of these parades that ultimately drew the young Pinochet to
I
military
forget when
life.
you go to Chicago.
Growing up in the coastal town of Valparaiso, 70 miles from the Chilean capital of Santiago,
Yeah.
he
Why?
dreamed of being a
We went in
soldier.
6th grade.
And with encouragement of his mother,
in
he joined the officer training school at a military academy
place.
in 1932 when he was 16.
Beauty and the Beast.
By most accounts, Pinochet was just an average student. Nothing during his studies hinted at a brilliant military strategist. What set him apart, though, was his dedication to the minutiae of being a soldier.
You saw
The
this?
details, the order,
The Kennedy Center, we saw
And
this.
by the time he graduated as a second
Italian
lieutenant in
opera. That was like
1936,
Cinderella.
he realized
Really?
that the
I think it
military
was Cinderella.
was his
but
calling.
it was
In his own words, he wrote that a soldier must assume great obligation. His first duty is to renounce life and material possessions as the fatherland demands.
So, Pinochet devoted the rest of his life to the military. As the years went by, he climbed the ranks, receiving promotion after promotion. Before long, he'd embraced the Chilean officer's ideology and became detached from the political concerns of the very people he was supposed to protect.
Soon, there would be no political group he despised more than leftists.
His first interaction with socialists was in 1939, overseeing earthquake relief in the town of Concepcion. Many of the socialists he encountered were well educated and cultured. It soon became obvious that they considered military officers nothing more than dumb soldiers. For the first time in his life, Pinochet felt intellectually inferior and unsophisticated.
The inferiority complex only grew as the years went by. In
In
1948, the Communist Party was outlawed in Chile, and Pinochet, by then a captain, was assigned to command a prison camp full of communist activists. In conversation with some of these prisoners, Pinochet actually learned about Marx, and he respected Marx's desire for social justice. However, he saw the actual party members as nothing more than agitators seeking to divide the poor and working class from the rest of society. His contempt towards Marxists would later be described by American Ambassador David Popper as evangelical and self-righteous.
Unfortunately for Pinochet, as he quietly moved further to the right, his country was moving further
Where's
to
my
the
farm
left,
guy?
setting the stage
Hey,
for a
asshole.
clash
It's not
between
like
the
this is my
citizens
I don't
and
even
the
know.
military.
I haven't. Have you
Throughout the
tiled your lawn yet?
1950s, a new generation of
Oh,
leftists started
what's
to
it called?
form in
When
Chile.
aerate your lawn? You're not
College
aerating a lawn?
students and working-class activists became frustrated with the sluggish economy that left the rural areas of the country impoverished.
The movement got a shot in the arm in 1959 when Fidel Castro and Che Guevara successfully overthrew Fulgencio Batista in Cuba. With each passing year, leftists were determined to transform Chile into the next Latin American socialist paradise.
And the man leading that charge was physician-turned-politician Salvador Allende.
Allende was the antithesis of the fatigue-wearing, cigar-smoking Latin American freedom fighter. He more closely resembled a college professor, sipping expensive scotch and musing on how to create a peaceful socialist revolution. What made Allende popular were his oratorical skills and his ability to unite all wings of the left, including the socialists and the reviled communists. And as his popularity grew, he drew the ire of the United States.
In 1964, Allende made his third attempt at a presidential run. However, the U.S. decided to tip the scales. The CIA secretly spent $4 million to fund the campaign of Allende's opponent, Eduardo Frei, and an additional $3 million was spent on anti-Allende propaganda in general. Frei ultimately won, and the U.S. breathed a sigh of relief.
To many, especially among the poor and working class, the Frei presidency was a disappointment. They felt forgotten by the new administration. By 1969, there was a call for Allende to run again.
And the fourth time was the charm. In the September 1970 election, Allende received just over 36% of the vote, indicating that he had won a plurality among the three candidates running. Since it wasn't a majority, though, Congress would choose between the two front-runners. Historically, they simply voted in favor of the candidate who received the most popular votes. And in 1970, that would mean siding with Allende.
But U.S. President Richard Nixon wasn't about to let that happen. Nixon knew he had until the end of October, when the Chilean Congress cast their votes, to try and stop Allende from winning. And no tactics were off the table.
On September 15, 1970, about a week after the Chilean election, Nixon met with National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger, CIA Director Richard Helms, and Attorney General John Mitchell to discuss how to prevent Allende's ascension. This included spending $10 million to initiate a military coup.
The U.S. knew about the Chilean military's reputation as the keepers of democracy and had been funding the military for years. Perhaps they could play into the military's fears of socialist authoritarianism and sway them to step in.
Early signs, though, indicated that the military didn't want to play ball. 3 days before Nixon declared his covert war on Chile, Ambassador Edward Corey wrote to the State Department that he was certain the military would refuse to cooperate in a coup.
A few weeks later, on September 25th, Corey sent another cable to Kissinger, reaffirming that nothing had changed. He wrote, "I am convinced that we cannot provoke a coup and that we should not run the risks simply to have another Bay of Pigs."
But the CIA refused to take no for an answer. They went about creating a plan to sow dissonance via propaganda and search for military officers who might collaborate.
Unfortunately, they faced a roadblock in the form of Commander-in-Chief of the Chilean Army, René Schneider. Schneider openly advocated for the peaceful democratic transfer of power, according to the Constitution, and many of his disgruntled officers refused the CIA's offers.
Realizing that General Schneider was the major obstacle, the CIA simply decided to take him out of the picture. With the help of Chilean officers, they devised a scheme to kidnap Schneider. Then a U.S.-backed military junta could establish order and prevent Allende from being inaugurated.
On October 22, 1970, General Schneider was driving through the streets of Santiago. Suddenly, his car was ambushed. Schneider instinctively reached for his sidearm and shot at his attackers.
The attackers fired back, striking Schneider 3 times, wounding him brutally. The kidnapping was a failure, but Schneider was out of the picture. He would succumb to his injuries 3 days later.
The reaction to the assassination wasn't what the United States had anticipated. The people of Chile were outraged that such an act of violence would occur in the streets of Santiago days before Congress was supposed to vote on the president. It was clearly politically motivated. A groundswell of support for the democratically elected winner, Salvador Allende, swept through the country and through Congress.
On October 24, 1970, the Chilean Congress confirmed Allende as president. 10 days later, he was sworn into office, becoming the first socialist elected president in Chile.
Neither the United States nor 55-year-old Augusto Pinochet were pleased with the outcome. And in a few short years, they would become willing partners in a military coup that set the stage for 17 years of dictatorship.
There are 3 words I always
Coming up, the coup of
they're very similar,
1973.
so whatever.
Now, back to the story.
Shtetl?
In the fall of 1970, Salvador Allende made history as the first socialist ever to be democratically elected to the office of president. A relatively peaceful transfer of power showed detractors that a leftist could seize power without firing a bullet.
But not everyone was thrilled that Allende was in power. The United States was thwarted in their efforts to stop the socialist, and for many in the Chilean military, including 55-year-old General Augusto Pinochet, they felt personally threatened.
As Allende celebrated his victory in the streets, Pinochet waved and smiled, at least feigning solidarity during the transfer of power. But deep down, he was facing an internal struggle. Pinochet himself wrote that, with great bitterness, we men of arms watched the road Chile had taken, and we felt that desperation of impotence. As a soldier sworn to protect the fatherland, I felt inhibited from acting because the instigator of chaos was the very government to which I owed obedience.
To that end, Pinochet kept his anti-Marxist opinions to himself and continued serving faithfully. When Allende asked him to command the garrison in Santiago, Pinochet accepted. He watched quietly as his country was transformed, first for the better, and then quickly for the worse.
The United States' inability to stop Allende was an embarrassing blunder for Nixon. 2 days after Allende was sworn in, Nixon's National Security Council formulated a new strategy to topple the Chilean president.
In a declassified memo dated November 6, 1970, Nixon explicitly told the council, no impression should be permitted in Latin America that they can get away with this, that it's safe to go this way. All over the world, it's too much the fashion to kick us around. We cannot fail to show our displeasure.
Destabilization became their plan.
What's that guy? It's like, Grow
The
Coin
United States
2020.
immediately slashed aid to Chile. At its peak in 1967, the U.S. gave Chile over $200 million annually.
It's raining here.
Now, that would be cut to only $3 million.
Coinciding with this was the CIA's covert operation to challenge Allende's credibility. According to a November 25th memo by Henry Kissinger, the operation was to include 5 elements. 1. Political action to divide and weaken the Allende coalition. 2. Maintaining and enlarging contacts in the Chilean military.
This would be a big
3.
thing.
Providing support to non-Marxist opposition groups. 4. Using Chilean media outlets to speak out against the Allende government. And 5. Falsely accusing the Soviets and Cubans of interfering in the Chilean election.
Unfortunately, during the first 6 months of Allende's presidency, these efforts yielded little success, because the socialist paradise Allende had promised was actually coming to fruition.
Almost instantly, Allende added thousands of jobs to the workforce by nationalizing certain industries, like the copper mines. On top of that, he ordered these new government jobs to dramatically increase wages. People who used to live in shacks suddenly had the money to buy a house.
Many among the poor and working class finally felt recognized. From the factory workers to the peasants in the countryside, these men and women for the first time weren't being treated like second-class citizens. There was unity and equality in Chile, and it was all thanks to Salvador Allende.
But by the end of 1971, the cracks in this paradise started to show.
Allende's Popular Unity Party didn't hold a majority in Congress, and they were constantly at odds with the opposition parties when it came to the socialist agenda. So Allende implemented his programs through decrees that pushed the boundaries of legality and fed into the fears of a totalitarian rule.
And while his policies helped the working class, they alienated the rich. He nationalized the banks, expropriated more land than his predecessor, and replaced factory managers with political allies. In response, the Chilean business elite took their money and their businesses elsewhere.
And with the government takeover of so many industries, it's possible that competent managers were replaced by idealistic party officials who had little experience in turning a profit and even less enthusiasm for learning. Production ground to a halt. Wages decreased in value because of inflation.
By the end of 1972, food lines were forming along the streets of Santiago. Within a year, common people had gone from praising Allende's name to cursing it. And Nixon was loving every minute of it. Seeing how quickly Chile had fallen into degradation, the CIA seized the opportunity.
That's great stuff.
During the
That's
early
gonna change the world.
1970s, the CIA pumped close to $2 million into running anti-Allende propaganda in a right-wing Chilean newspaper, El Mercurio. According to internal CIA memos, El Mercurio played a vital role in sowing dissent towards the Allende regime.
And as that dissent grew louder, the U.S. knew it was
Fuck your
finally time
cow.
to enact a military coup. The two questions were, how soon would it happen, and who would lead it?
The CIA was first introduced to General Augusto Pinochet as a disgruntled military officer in the summer of 1971. But despite Pinochet's anti-Allende sentiments, he was considered too timid to lead a coup himself.
This same frustration applied to the entire Chilean military. The U.S. was more than ready to support a military coup, and yet it seemed no one had the courage to accept the offer. Even though by the middle of 1973, the Chilean people were practically begging for the military to save them from Allende.
Even the Chilean Congress was getting frustrated. On August 22, 1973, the Chamber of Deputies, the lower house, declared that Allende and his government had acted unconstitutionally. Among the 20 accusations, the Congress claimed that Allende had illegally confiscated private property, censored the press, supported armed guerrilla groups, and usurped power belonging to the judiciary, Congress, and the Treasury. They demanded that the military step in and save the country.
3 of the nation's most senior officers finally decided to take action. Air Force General Gustavo Lee, Navy Admiral Jose Toribio Marino, and General Cesar Mendoza of the State Police.
Notably missing from the cabal was Augusto Pinochet. Though he was aware of the plot, he knew he couldn't participate yet. Much of this had to do with the fact that on August 23rd, the day after the Chamber of Deputies resolution, Allende had appointed Pinochet as Commander-in-Chief of the Army.
Pinochet assured Allende that he was loyal to the Constitution. He may have despised the president's politics, but he swore an oath to fatherland, and he wasn't going to break it. Unfortunately, though, the conspirators either needed Pinochet's support or to remove him as an obstacle.
On September 9th, Gustavo Lee interrupted a birthday party for Pinochet's daughter to discuss the need for military action. What exactly was said between the two is unknown, but But during their argument, Admiral Marino sent Pinochet a message asking for support. He made it clear to the commander that the only way to save Chile was if all branches of the military united. It was now or never.
By the time Lee left the house, Pinochet had officially, but reluctantly, signed off on the coup. It was set to take place in 2 days.
When the CIA learned that the coup was finally greenlit, they planned for a U.S. military intervention if things should go south. Luckily for them, it wasn't necessary now.
At 6 a.m. on September 11, 1973, the military cut off all the telephone lines in Santiago, except for one, which allowed the generals to speak directly to Allende.
Starting with Pinochet's hometown of Valparaiso, cities around Chile began to fall into military hands, and more soldiers were headed directly towards Santiago.
When word reached Allende, he decided not to go out without a fight. With an AK-47 in hand, the 65-year-old president headed to La Moneda, the presidential palace. With a small garrison of loyal troops, he broadcast a message to the people, promising to defend the government until the end.
Outside the city, the conspirators, including Pinochet, set up base camps and monitored the progress. Eventually, they were able to get a message to Allende: resign and we will fly you out of Chile peacefully. Allende refused.
That was it then. Pinochet gave his fellow conspirators orders: unconditional surrender, no dialogue.
According to some reports, the military then began arresting Allende supporters who were known Marxists throughout Santiago. In response, leftist guerrilla forces took up arms of their own.
Soon, La Moneda was surrounded. The police set up roadblocks throughout the city, making it impossible for anyone to reach the palace. Pinochet broadcast a radio message urging civilians to stay home and not risk their own lives.
When Allende discovered who was behind the attacks, he finally realized the gravity of the situation. He allegedly said under his breath,
Knowing the end was near, Allende reportedly ordered any documents with the names of his supporters to be burned. He knew the military would round them up and execute them. Hopefully, he could save some of their lives.
At around 9:30 a.m., Allende delivered his own radio message condemning the leaders of the coup. He signed off proclaiming, "Long live Chile, long live the people, long live the workers." It was his final speech.
Not long after, Pinochet ordered his men to open fire on La Moneda. For the next several hours, the palace became a battleground, with fighter jets and tanks bombing and shelling the walls. During breaks in the violence, some of Allende's security forces, as well as family and friends, surrendered. But Allende refused.
Just before 2 p.m., soldiers stormed La Moneda and rounded up the final fighters, including Allende. But Allende, who was lastly alive, managed to sneak away from his captors. He grabbed his AK-47, put it under his own chin, and fired.
The coup was complete. The military junta was officially in control of Chile, and the man in charge was the one who signed on to the coup at the last possible second, Augusto Pinochet.
Coming up, Pinochet consolidates power, enacting a U.S.-approved reign of terror.
Now back to the story.
On September 11, 1973, the socialist experiment in Chile came to a bloody end. Within hours of taking control of the presidential palace, the military announced they were disbanding Congress and suspending the Constitution. Chile would now be run by a military junta.
The four leaders were, of course, Pinochet, Gustavo Lee, José Toribio Merino, and Cesar Mendoza, representing the Army, Air Force, Navy, and State Police, respectively. The four would rotate terms as president, starting with the most senior member among the four, 57-year-old Augusto Pinochet.
The immediate response to the coup from the upper classes and business elite was one of elation. From their perspective, the military had done their duty and saved them from a socialist dictator.
For the United States, which had spent years sowing chaos in Chile, the reaction was a big sigh of relief. It's likely that everyone at the White House, from Nixon on down, was thrilled that Allende was gone. The mission now was to make it clear that the U.S. wasn't directly involved in the coup, which technically was true.
However, the amount of money the CIA pumped into the propaganda project certainly helped shape public opinion against Allende. And in a September 16 White House recording, both Nixon and Kissinger explicitly acknowledged that the U.S. created the conditions for the coup to take place.
To that end, the United States waited until 22 other countries had recognized the junta before they did it themselves. It was no secret that the U.S. hated Allende. A quick recognition might draw suspicion about their role in the coup. Instead, they wanted to maintain their image as simple champions of democracy.
Meanwhile, back in Chile, the public quickly began to see what exactly was in store for them now that the junta was in charge. And for the bourgeois and the technocrats who'd been public enemies during the Allende years, it was an unfettered capitalist paradise.
The junta turned to a group of young University of Chicago educated Chilean economists to rejuvenate the failing economy. The Chicago boys, as they were called, were given carte blanche to run Chile's economy as they saw fit. For middle and upper class businessmen, it was a welcome relief. But for everyone else, the early days of a junta were a taste of the 17 years of terror that lay in store.
The goal of the new administration was obvious: suppress any and all memory of Marxist thought. Schools and universities suddenly saw soldiers on their campuses. Classes no longer taught anything that could be perceived as leftist. Liberal arts were essentially erased. Instead, there was a strict emphasis on technical studies like science and mathematics.
The junta also took control of the media. Radio and television programs broadcast pro-junta propaganda that instilled fear into anyone who'd ever said one nice thing about Marxism. Neighbors, families, and friends became suspicious of one another. One wrong word to the wrong person could make them disappear.
The violence and horror that would grip Chile for almost the next 2 decades started the day the tanks rolled down the streets of Santiago on September 11th. And in the weeks that followed, the bloodshed intensified. Roughly 20 detention centers were quickly established. The two most infamous were sports stadiums in Santiago, where prisoners were tortured and executed. Most of the people arrested during the raids were political activists, union workers, former Allende party officials, and in many cases, their deaths or disappearances were never officially reported or denied by authorities.
The violence was so severe that in the first few weeks, the CIA couldn't even provide an estimate of how many civilians had been killed. In late October, they finally guessed that over 13,000 people had been arrested. How many died was, and still is, unknown.
The early violence culminated in the mid-October Caravan of Death. Between October 16th and 19th, General Sergio Arellano Stark, along with 5 others, toured through the Chilean countryside on a crusade of murder. In 4 days, they traveled by helicopter to 4 towns, beat, tortured, and bayoneted political prisoners. By the time they were finished, at least 68 people were dead. Their bodies were thrown into unmarked graves, forcing their families to mourn without a proper burial. And it was all done on Pinochet's orders.
When the CIA learned about this, they justified it as part of the junta's mission to neutralize extremists. Though, as Peter Kornblum, author of the Pinochet File, notes, most victims of the Caravan of Death were upstanding civic officials and well-known members of their communities.
For Pinochet, the violence was a means to an end. Call it cowardice or self-preservation or respect for democratic order, but during Allende's years, Pinochet had kept his mouth shut about his hatred of Marxism. Now that he was in power, though, he wasn't going to let anyone shut him up.
In fact, as blood was spilled in the Chilean jungles, Pinochet came to realize that he liked being in charge. For the first time in his life, he answered to no one. And if he wanted to maintain that power, he'd have to get his three co-leaders out of the way. With the army firmly in his corner, no one would be able to stop him.
In June 1974, less than a year after the coup, Pinochet passed the Decree Law 527. The law named him Supreme Chief of Chile, making him the indefinite leader. By the end of the year, Pinochet had proclaimed his title as President of the Republic.
Only General Gustavo Lee, head of the Air Force, openly objected to Pinochet's grab for power. But, realizing he was greatly outnumbered, he acquiesced.
With absolute power firmly established, Pinochet went about expanding his reign of terror. In June 1974, the Dirección de Inteligencia Nacional, or DINA, was established as Chile's official secret police force. Leading the DINA was Lieutenant Colonel Juan Manuel Contreras, a favorite of Pinochet. Under Contreras, DINA scoured Chile, looking not just for Marxists, but anyone who wasn't loyal to Pinochet. Systematic raids in towns, villages, and cities resulted in the disappearance of thousands.
In no time at all, DINA secured its place as the major political force in Chile. One informant would later say, "There are three sources of power in Chile: Pinochet, God, and DINA."
While the vast majority of the public grew to fear DINA, the agency's inner machinations were entirely a mystery. However, one organization may have known exactly how it operated and how it could be put to large use: the CIA.
In the fall of 1975, Contreras called a secret meeting with other South American military intelligence leaders to discuss plans for what was described as their own version of Interpol. But instead of policing crimes, it would crack down on leftist subversion.
By the end of the meeting, Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Uruguay had all agreed to share information on subversives in their countries. The operation was called Condor, after the bird, and for many years it would become emblematic of state-sponsored terrorism.
The extent of U.S. participation in Condor has never been fully confirmed, but based on declassified information, we know that the U.S. opened a communication channel with Condor members, likely passing off intel they had on leftist agitators in South America. This made it much easier to coordinate suppression, not just in Chile, but across the whole continent.
Assassinations were a major tactic used by Condor, many of which took place in Argentina, which in the months after the coup is exactly where many Chileans had fled.
But one of Condor's most infamous assassinations involved a Chilean not in Argentina, but the United States. And the consequences would be felt for years.
During the 1973 coup, Defense Minister Orlando Letelier was one of the first Allende cabinet officials to be arrested and tortured. International pressure forced the junta to free Letelier, but he was forced to leave Chile. He eventually made his way to Washington, D.C., and began an aggressive anti-Pinochet lobbying campaign.
The CIA kept close tabs on Letelier, especially as he began making inroads with members of Congress. When the word got to Pinochet that Letelier was gaining traction in Washington, he was furious. Letelier needed to be silenced sooner rather than later. So, in the summer of 1976, Pinochet devised a plan to assassinate him.
Using the web of condor connections, Pinochet and Contreras sent a team of assassins to Washington, D.C. by way of Paraguay. Among them was an American expatriate named Michael Townley.
Townley had become one of Contreras' favorite assassins. In 1974, he used a car bomb to murder General Carlos Prats, the commander-in-chief of the army under Allende. A year later, Dina, and likely Townley, tried to kill Bernardo Leighton, a prominent politician who was living in exile in Rome. Leighton survived the bullets, but they left him with permanent brain damage. When this new mission came along, Contreras thought Townley was the perfect man for the job.
On September 21st, 1976, Orlando Letelier was driving through D.C. with his associates Michael and Ronnie Moffett. As they made their way through the Sheridan Circle, their car exploded from a bomb Townley had attached underneath.
Michael Moffett survived the blast only because he was in the back seat. Letelier and Ronnie Moffett weren't so lucky.
For Augusto Pinochet, the successful assassination of Orlando Letelier proved that his reach could be felt not just in Chile or South America, but all over the world. With the help of Operation Condor, he could kill any agitator, anytime, anywhere.
But the international response to Letelier's murder would be far more severe than he expected. Not only was it obvious that Letelier was targeted by the Chilean government, but Pinochet himself came under scrutiny as the one who ordered the hit. Pinochet had just put the entirety of Operation Condor in jeopardy.
So I got to go like next week from him, and then I can go to Ripple. So as we come up through the years, it was kind of one of them deals where as Grandpa got retired, I wasn't able to take over. And plus, I didn't live there 30 minutes away.
Thanks for listening to Dictators. Next week, we'll explore the rocky relationship between Pinochet and the U.S. in the wake of the Letelier assassination, and how the will of the people led to Pinochet's downfall.
You can find all episodes of Dictators and all other Parcast originals for free on Spotify.
Not only does Spotify already have all of your favorite music, but now Spotify is making it easy for you to enjoy all of your favorite Parcast originals like Dictators for free from your phone, desktop, or smart speaker.
To stream Dictators on Spotify, just open the app and type Dictators in the search bar.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Parcast and Twitter at Parcast Network. We'll see you next time.
Dictators was created by Max Cutler and is a Parcast Studios original. It is executive produced by Max Cutler, sound design by Russell Nash, and production assistance by Ron Shapiro, Carly Madden, and Travis Clark. This episode of Dictators was written by Joe Guerra, with writing assistance by Kate Gallagher, and stars Kate Leonard and Richard Rossner.
Saying that I did a good job. So he said, hey, what do you know? So what do you call
July 2nd, 1986. In Los Nogales, a working-class neighborhood in the Chilean capital of Santiago, Rodrigo Rojas was loading film into his camera. The 19-year-old had recently returned to Chile after spending nearly a decade in exile in the United States.
Rojas grew up watching President Augusto Pinochet from afar, hearing the horrible details of men and women being tortured and murdered for their political beliefs. He knew that the only way to spread the word of Pinochet's atrocities was through his camera lens. Today he was going to photograph a protest.
All of a sudden, an army patrol unit ran in to break up the demonstration. Rojas and a protester, Carmen Quintana, were taken into military custody.
For several minutes, the soldiers beat both Rojas and Quintana mercilessly. When the beating finally stopped, there was hope that they'd be released. But then the two felt a liquid being poured all over them, followed by the sound of a lighter.
Rojas and Quintana were lit on fire. When the flames were finally extinguished, their bodies were thrown into a ditch north of Santiago. 4 days later, Rojas died, and his death would bring the relationship between Augusto Pinochet and the United States to the brink of collapse.
It's kind of one of them deals that he was super interested in. So as time went on, it got where he couldn't do it.
Welcome to Dictators, a podcast original. I'm Richard.
And I'm Kate. You can find all episodes of Dictators and all other podcast originals for free on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. To stream Dictators for free on Spotify, just open the app and type Dictators in the search bar.
Today we continue our look at General Augusto Pinochet. From 1973 to 1990, Pinochet ruled over Chile with a brutality that left tens of thousands missing or dead. And it all happened with the support of United States intelligence.
This week, we'll dive into the aftermath of the Orlando Letelier assassination and how it affected Pinochet's relationship with the United States. Then we'll see how after nearly 2 decades of military dictatorship, the citizens of Chile said no to 8 more years of Pinochet.
We'll explore the aftermath of the Orlando Letelier assassination right after this.
He's a very high-strung individual, so it just
On the morning of September 21st, 1976, 44-year-old Orlando Letelier's car exploded in Washington, D.C. Letelier was the Minister of Defense under Salvador Allende, the former president of Chile. Since the 1973 coup that ousted Allende, Letelier had been living in exile as an outspoken critic of the new military junta.
The head of that junta was 60-year-old General Augusto Pinochet. Pinochet, all of this served the supposed goal of eliminating communism in Latin America.
To destroy any shred of Marxism in the region, and they had the backing of the United States.
Most importantly, the U.S. provided a communication channel, essential for the U.S. these countries to share intelligence, and in turn, easier to eliminate their enemies.
For Pinochet, the assassination of Orlando Letelier all the way in America proved that he was able to kill his enemies anywhere on the globe. And he thought with Letelier gone, problems abroad would cease. He was wrong.
To many Americans, it seemed improbable that such a prominent foreign national could be murdered in broad daylight and in such a violent way. Congressmen from both sides of the aisle were horrified.
Almost immediately, Pinochet was blamed. U.S. Senator. Another example of the human rights violations that had allegedly been occurring since Pinochet took over in 1973. And the United States could have prevented
becoming excessive and harming South America's image. In a memo to ambassadors in South American countries, he wrote, counter-terrorist activity of this type would further exacerbate public world criticisms of the governments involved.
However, for reasons that remain unclear, Kissinger never put an end to the operation or the covert assassinations. This caused confusion among ambassadors in South America who were waiting for their orders.
On September 20th, 1976, the Assistant Secretary for Inter-American Affairs sent a cable to his deputy telling him to do nothing. He ordered him to simply instruct the ambassadors to take no further action.
Less than 24 hours later, Orlando Letelier was dead on U.S. soil.
For nearly a year, Pinochet believed he had gotten away with murder. He vehemently denied all connections to Letelier and even blamed extremists on the left as the real perpetrators.
But in late 1977, an FBI investigation concluded what everyone already knew. The Chilean government was responsible. In particular, Pinochet's secret police, the DINA, led by Colonel Manuel Contreras.
Shockingly, the new U.S. President Jimmy Carter did nothing in response to the FBI's findings. Carter even invited Pinochet to the White House in September 1977, where he mentioned his human rights concerns, but did not accuse the dictator of any crimes.
But back in Chile, members of the junta were frustrated with Pinochet. They understood how Contreras and his Diva squad had damaged Chile's image at home and abroad. Reform was needed immediately.
With his back against the wall, Pinochet agreed to not just remove Contreras from PINA, but to dissolve the organization entirely. He replaced it with a more restrained version called the Central Nacional de Informaciones, or CNI.
This was too little too late for Pinochet. Soon, the FBI made another shocking discovery that brought U.S.-Chile relations to the brink of collapse.
In spring of 1978, the FBI discovered that one of Letelier's assassins was a U.S. expatriate living in Chile named Michael Townley. If you recall from last week, Townley had been involved in multiple condor assassinations before this.
Since Townley was an American citizen and had
By the end of April, he told Pinochet hand over Contreras. Pinochet refused.
With foreign relations at a crossroads, several members of the junta began to believe that Pinochet was overstepping his authority, especially one of the 1973 coup's leading architects, General Gustavo Lee. For years, Lee had quietly worried that Pinochet was becoming too powerful, and with Chile's image tarnished thanks to the assassinations and human rights violations, perhaps it was time for the problem to be removed.
In the spring of 1978, Lee aired his frustrations to the press. Worse yet, he suggested a timetable for an end to the junta altogether. This was not the most careful approach to the situation, and the ramifications came swiftly.
On July 24th, Pinochet demanded Lee's resignation. When Lee refused, Pinochet simply proclaimed him incompetent and removed him from the junta.
High-ranking officer simply because he wanted to. Junta members never again questioned who was in control. However, Pinochet probably knew deep down that even though he called himself president of the republic, he still wasn't legitimate. He hadn't been elected by the people in accordance with the 1925.
But right after the 1973 coup, the junta had suspended the Constitution. In Pinochet's view, that document was obsolete. So in 1980, he had a new one drafted that gave him even more power.
Energy drink
Piece
alcohol?
by piece, he was doing away with the idea of the junta and making himself the sole leader of Chile.
But instead of consolidating power on his own, Pinochet offered another somewhat shocking solution. He would let the people decide through a referendum.
Yoshi.
Pinochet had a strong feeling that the people were on his side. Despite the reign of terror that had become synonymous with the name Augusto Pinochet, many still saw the 65-year-old despot in a positive light. For the wealthy and middle class, the Allende years had left scars that never seemed to heal. Pinochet was the only line of defense to stop Chile from falling back into socialist hands.
As we mentioned last week, the Chicago Boys, a group of free market economists who had studied at the University of Chicago, were essentially they enacted a series of policies known as shock treatment. Essentially, Chile slashed most regulations on businesses, cut up to 20%, and auctioned off state industries. The copper mines were remained in government control.
These new reforms stabilized Chile's shaky economy. According to Pamela Constable and Arturo Valenzuela's book, A Nation of Enemies, Life Under Pinochet, by 1979, the fiscal deficit had been eliminated and annual growth rates were averaging 6.5%. Inflation had dropped to 65% by 1977, and production climbed 8% in 1978. reducing unemployment.
The result was a wave of national consumerism. Imported goods came flooding in, especially expensive scotch, French cosmetics, Italian refrigerators, and Japanese radios.
Which is a
For
fucking.
the first time in nearly a decade, Chile's economy was actually prospering.
The timing couldn't have been better. Not only was Pinochet able to run on a booming economy, but he was also able to distract the people from deteriorating relations with the United States.
Toward the end of 1979, the U.S. instituted economic sanctions against Chile. The U.S. also supported UN resolutions condemning Chile's human rights violations. But the average Chilean may not have been aware of the international friction. The message at home was clear. A vote for Pinochet was a vote for economic success and against the evils of socialism.
On September 11th, 1980, Chileans overwhelmingly voted yes to the new constitution. Augusto Pinochet was granted 8 more years as president,
Yeah, man.
after which a referendum would be held to decide whether he'd remain in power. In his acceptance speech, Pinochet declared, "For a second time, we have defeated the totalitarians."
Coming up, Pinochet gets his second win, and relations between Chile and the United States begin to improve. Now back to the story.
In September 1980, Augusto Pinochet was officially voted into office for another 8 years. Since the 1973 coup, the 65-year-old despot hadn't technically been the president, at least according to the Constitution. But that all changed when he was officially elected under a new Constitution.
The good news kept coming for Pinochet. A few months after his big win, the United States elected a new president themselves, the anti-communist crusader Ronald Reagan. Like Pinochet, Ronald Reagan vowed to bring down communism and terrorism, not just at home, but across
It's weird
the
that they
globe.
go 444 days, 13 months, 315 days, 9 months, 208 days, 5 months. Why
Reagan
would it
seemingly believed the Pinochet propaganda, that leftists were actually the ones behind Orlando Letelier's death. In 1978, on his nationally broadcast radio program, Reagan said, "The question worth
Rabbi
asking
Rothschild,
is
just say
whether
Rabbi
Letelier
Rothschild.
might have been murdered by his own masters.
What I was thinking
Alive,
against
he
my
could be
will.
compromised. Dead,
1 minute.
he could
You
become a
could beat that
martyr."
one. Surrender and death of
Tone set for the
Leonardo
new
de los
administration.
Reyes.
Reagan immediately got to work repairing relations.
And then it
with
has
Chile.
8 hours at the bottom.
One of
I
the
don't know.
first things he did after his 1981 inauguration was end the U.S. sanctions against Chile. The administration also reversed course when it came to voting on UN resolutions concerning Chile's human rights violations.
One of the most significant moves Reagan made was abolishing the Kennedy Amendment. In 1976, Senator Edward Kennedy had successfully lobbied Congress to ban all military sales to Chile in
What's the
response
first
to
school
human rights
shooting?
violations. In the
Charlottesville,
fall of
Virginia,
1981,
1840.
the Senate, at the behest
John
of
Anthony
Reagan,
Garden did
was
the
able
ultimate
to
embassy that
repeal
shot
the
by
ban.
student.
However,
died 2
the
days
final
later.
version of the bill came with stipulations that were expected to be followed. First, that Chile no longer sponsored terrorism. Second, that Chile rectify its human rights violations. And finally, that Chile would comply with investigations into the Letelier assassinations.
While most people in Reagan's administration were more than willing to certify the stipulations without evidence, some had reservations. Among them was Elliott Abrams, Assistant Secretary of State for Human
I
Rights
was
and
going up to give
Humanitarian
away the school
Affairs.
shooting that took long.
Abrams wasn't against selling arms to Pinochet. Far
And then
from
did you worry about it?
However, he and members of the Department of Justice
I remember
and FBI knew
there
that
was a
Chile
thing.
wouldn't
It was like we had to worry about drive-by shootings
Word got out that
from the
Pinochet was
public
still
school kids driving by
violating human
and
rights,
yelling
which he
at us.
was. It could be a major
And
scandal for Reagan.
he had to wear that.
Chile
We always
wasn't
thought
the
we would.
only
Right?
factor
Yeah.
at risk here either. Reagan
Why?
had begun
They
his
come by
war on
and they're-
communism by selling arms to the El
Always keeping
Salvador
ads like,
military as they fought against
Right, yeah.
leftist guerrilla groups.
Tons of them. Like
Blowback
thousands.
Pinochet would put that operation at risk too. Fearing a loss of credibility, Reagan put off certifying arms sales to Chile.
It is clear how much Pinochet knew about these behind-the-scenes machinations, or if he had any time to care about what was going on in Washington, because the soaring Chilean economy was suddenly taking a dramatic fall, sending the country into one of the worst depressions in its history.
The drastic turnaround of the Chilean economy was described by economist Milton Friedman as a miracle.
You seem disappointed,
But
you know.
it was all smoke and
Her
mirrors.
day one is university.
Chile's economy relied heavily on foreign loans and investments. By 1981, that foreign debt amounted to $15.6 billion, more than double the debt from just 3 years earlier. At the same time, imports had increased 128%, while exports decreased by 8%, which means Chileans were buying foreign goods and no one was buying Chilean goods.
Adding to Chile's woes was the fact that as part of the shock treatment, there was a sprint to privatize multiple industries. In doing so, government regulation went out the window. Banks had carte blanche with these new companies, allowing them to exploit their need for loans and charge them high interest rates.
With businesses taking out loans based on shaky collateral, many were forced to file for bankruptcy or shut down their factories during the downturn. According to A Nation of Enemies, Chile under Pinochet, by the end of 1981, bad loans made up 25% of the total capital and reserves of banks.
And as if things couldn't get any worse, mineral prices were decreasing around the world. For Chile, this meant that one of their most important exports, copper, was worth much less.
No one, from businessmen to skilled laborers, was immune to this sudden recession. In 1982 alone, 30% of factory jobs, 44% of jobs in the mines, and 62% of construction jobs were gone. Between 1980 and 1983, over 2,000 businesses declared themselves insolvent. To make ends meet, many highly skilled workers were forced to take menial jobs like taxi driving and bicycle repair.
For Augusto Pinochet, 1982 was one of the worst years of his presidency. Giving the Chicago boys complete control over economic policy had proven devastating. He knew he needed to make changes. Ironically, they would echo the reforms of his socialist enemy, Salvador Allende.
Pinochet replaced the Chicago boys with a single man, Rolf Luders, as economics minister. In the beginning of 1983, Luders proclaimed that while he didn't support the idea of the government meddling in businesses, some solution was desperately needed for the current situation.
His solution? Control the banks instead. 3 banks were liquidated because their debt was greater than their reserves. 5 other major banks were placed in government hands. In order to bail them out, the government was forced to renegotiate the bad loans, increase import duties, and increase the gas tax.
These moves caused foreign lenders to panic over whether Chile would default on their loans. The Chilean government confidently promised that they could pay what they already owed and could continue to do so in the future.
Of course, most of the people actually footing the bill were the taxpaying citizens, and by the middle of 1983, those taxpayers had finally had enough of the rampant corruption within the Pinochet regime.
Since the 1973 coup, the remaining socialists and communists who hadn't been killed or arrested had been forced into hiding. Opposition leaders, labor leaders, and college students alike knew it was better to keep their mouths shut. But with the economic despair of the early 80s, the left saw an opportunity to fight back. In May 1983, organized labor leaders did the unthinkable. They called for a nationwide general strike. No one knew what the response would be, and after a decade of brutal oppression, it's likely that only minimal participation was expected.
Instead, on May 11th, Chileans brought the entire country to a screeching halt. Thousands upon
I'm a
thousands of
hardcore
people
bitch.
walked off the job and marched through the streets. In Santiago, the protest lasted well into
There's the
the
most
evening.
hardcore
It
motherfucker on
didn't stop
TikTok.
there.
I know,
For
motherfucker.
5 months, Chile was consumed in protests, marches, and strikes.
Are you?
For the first time ever,
Yeah.
people boldly and publicly expressed their displeasure with Pinochet.
Translating that anger into actual change was a more difficult problem. The left was disorganized with various socialist, communist, and democratic parties, and workers who participated in the strikes could be fired or arrested, forcing people to reconsider their participation in protests. But the strikes had at least spurred Pinochet into action. He figured that if he could
He
fix
wants
the
to host
economy,
it.
then
It's
perhaps
streaming.
the protests would stop.
We're gonna get him to
After a
host
couple of
streaming.
fits and starts, Pinochet finally installed yet another new finance minister, Hernan Mihi, in 1985.
Do you think this
While
Lauren Boebert is
Mihi
gonna
was
win?
very much a free market advocate, he wasn't afraid to use the government as a tool to help failing businesses if needed. He implemented more regulation, especially in banking and
So you're
agriculture.
already wrong
And
on
he
one.
figured out a way to renew the
Oh,
confidence
Sarah
of
has to be
foreign
sent. I knew
lenders
that
by
one.
agreeing to debt equity
Oh, I knew
swaps.
that one. I said that
Essentially, investors agreed to pay off Chile's debt in exchange for a piece of various state industries.
Within a year, the World Bank
I
was
go for the
back
big
to
ones.
approving massive loans, which in turn inspired foreign lenders to invest in Chilean
Better
industries.
work win.
Older manufacturers were also able to adapt to the changing markets. For example, as Constable in Valenzuela explained in their book, collapsing textile companies were merged together to produce higher quality cloth for export, and a Fiat assembly plant was turned into a refrigeration facility for produce.
Mihi's policies put Pinochet made during the 1980s.
But who had died or disappeared would never be forgotten. And as they continued their fight, response would put him at odds with his most important ally,
Why?
the United States.
I'm wrong.
After a brief and costly economic depression in the early 80s, Chile's economy had once again managed to bounce back, and Augusto Pinochet finally accepted that unfettered